Hello and welcome to the Netsurian Cybersecurity Q&A. Today's topic is Zero Trust Architecture or ZTA and the role that Netsurian's managed open XDR solution can play in helping you implement this. So Zero Trust Architecture is an approach to cybersecurity that has gained popularity because of the evolving threatscape. These attacks are now persistent, they're sophisticated, and in many cases, because of the blurring of the perimeter, difficult to detect insider versus outsider. Of course, since the COVID pandemic, remote access has become a must. And this has made for complex IT and it become difficult to know who's inside, who's outside. The traditional model assumed that there was a well-known perimeter. Either you were inside the company, inside the firewall, if you like, or you were on the outside. And once you're in, you've got free access to all of the resources inside the network. And this was appropriate for a simpler time where remote access was maybe not such a big thing. But since it is, the zero trust architecture has come into vogue, and you now should authenticate and authorize every interaction. So, regardless of whether it's a user or it's a device, there is really no concept of an inside or an outside. And so if that user or that device wants to access a network resource, authentication authorization is a must. This means you should never zero trust. You should always verify because attacks, of course, can originate inside or outside. You can't even maybe tell what's inside, what's outside. So here are the differences between a traditional architecture versus a zero trust. The traditional architecture is static and based around a perimeter, but the ZTA is dynamic, changes, and is not really dependent on any perimeter. In the traditional model, once you're identified, you've got implicit trust inside the perimeter. In ZTA, even if you're in, it doesn't matter. Anytime you try to access something, we have to confirm your user identity and authenticate you. In the traditional model, you authenticate once when you're connecting to the network. With ZTA, you're connecting every time you're accessing any network device. In the traditional model, once you're in, you're in. And so internal traffic is unencrypted. Whereas in the zero trust architecture, I don't care if you're in or you're out. There is no in, there is no out. If it's a network session, it is encrypted end to end. So how does this really work? Well, the way it works is by using a security policy which you define, which gets applied by a trust algorithm, which will ultimately grant or deny access to a resource by either a user or a device. In addition to the algorithm, you need an identity credential system where you have identified who's who in the zoo and what can they do. You need security analytics. This means you're collecting logs, you're looking at user and entity behavior analytics, and you're considering threat intel. Of course, you have endpoints, and so endpoint protection. And then, as I mentioned, all traffic inside is in fact encrypted. So here's how it works. Here's a user via the trust algorithm, which is continuously authenticating, getting access to all of these network resources. What does the trust algorithm need? On the one side, the credentialing system, the security policy that says what's allowed, and of course, endpoint protection, threat intelligence, activity log, and an inspection of network traffic to identify anything that looks gnarly or out of place. Using this, a trust algorithm may permit or deny resource access. And of course, all that access is always going to be encrypted. And anything you see and do is going to be logged so that this can actually be studied. So what does Netsurian's managed open XDR do for you in this scenario? Well, first of all, the solution is a combination of technology and services, including log collection, including threat intelligence and the associated detection, endpoint protection, and network traffic analysis. The open part of OpenXDR says that you can make any decision you like with regards to technology, whatever credentialing system you're using, whatever authentication mechanism you've got, whatever you've got by way of endpoints, operating systems, VPNs, firewalls, networks, these are your choice. And our solution will map to whatever choices you've already made. There's no demand on our side to buy this, that, or the other thing. What's the upside of a zero trust architecture when you've implemented it with NetSurian's managed open XDR? Well, for the one thing, you will limit the blast radius. You know that an attack is inevitable, right? Assume breach is the paradigm. So when it occurs, you will confine the security incident to the smallest possible blast radius. And this is very important because, of course, perfect protection is simply not practical. The second benefit you get out of it, you improve situational awareness. Even if no blast has occurred, you know very carefully, because of all of the monitoring that goes on, what's normal, what's occurring, what's happening inside your network. And this is very important in order to identify what's out of ordinary or first time seen. And then, of course, data confidentiality is improved. There's much less likelihood that your stuff's going to get out there onto the dark web. So these are the benefits of managed open XDR as it relates to zero trust. Thank you for your attention.